What's happening, people? Back with another reaction, back with some more punk rock, and we're back with some Subhumans. I mentioned it in multiple videos already, not only a couple Subhumans reactions I've done, but also a Culture Shock reaction I did. I'm just a huge fan of the Subhumans. They're one of my very favorite bands of all time. Dick Lucas, one of my very favorite humans. I'm cautious and hesitant when it comes to lionizing people, but he is someone who I think is as close as you get to a human hero, just a legendary person in terms of his progressive values, his lyrical creativity and articulation, his visual art, so that is seen on many of the Subhumans releases, and I think releases for the other bands in his sort of stable of musical outlets, including Citizen Fish and Culture Shock, as I mentioned. But this song, which I first heard as part of the EP LP, I mentioned it before, this is a crucial release for me. I've heard some people say, oh, I don't think it's that great because it's sort of like, it's from different EPs, so it doesn't flow the way one of their albums does. I have no problem with that opinion, but I just think it's a great release, and it was very pivotal for me. I do love The Day the Country Died, so I understand the way that album flows. I do get what they're talking about, but for me, EP LP will always be fantastic. We're going to listen to one of my favorite tunes on the album. It's a tune that I think could very well be like a Culture Shock tune, in the sense that it has this, it's punk, but it's sort of like down-tempo, almost dub a little bit, but then by the end it sort of rip-roars and it goes into a more typical Subhumans idiom. But it's the song Human Error, which, as far as I can tell, and again, lyrics are interpretational, people might have a different view of this, but as far as I can tell, it's about the way our species just seems to have this propensity for, this proclivity for violence and solving situations, problems, real or imagined, with brutality, with, cudgels and sticks rather than brains and common sense, or logic even better. And ultimately it makes reference to this, it's like, well, there's a bomb going off in Belfast, there's a war at Vietnam, there's, wars going on everywhere, and as humans continue to advance technologically and as new innovations are made in, unfortunately, weaponry, ultimately larger and larger numbers of innocent humans stand in great peril and could potentially be wiped out in, genocidal massacres, especially when we begin talking about nuclear weapons, which is where this song ultimately goes, that, this propensity toward violence, towards territoriality and xenophobia and so on, once we get toys, if you will, that are so destructive and catastrophic, ultimately we are talking about, civilization cataclysm and failure, and millions and millions of lives lost in horribly violent and painful ways. And by the end of the song, it's saying that, in this scenario, it might not even be an actual human. We might automate things to the point where the thing that finally hits a button is a program or a piece of hardware that says, nope, I see a threat, therefore I hit the button, I start a nuclear holocaust, mutually assured destruction, an exchange of, lethal missile strikes around the globe. So not only does it, bear a little similarity to Nina 99 Luftballons, but I also did react to Naked Aggression's Time Bomb, which, is about from a decade later than this, but really hits on a lot of the same themes, and sort of has the same vibe in that it's a punk rock tune, but it's kind of slower, and, it has this sort of, like, ethereal quality. But again, the Subhumans lyrics just really do a great job of, like, painting stark realities with images, like, word pictures that make you uncomfortable, but that make you also consider, are there other ways? Can we get out of these cycles of death and brutality and violence? But, at least according to this song, it was just a human error because man invented war, so even if a machine did hit the button, at the end of the day, it's because it was programmed by humans, and we sort of have this, again, predisposition to conflict and to using violence to solve perceived situations. So that's where I think the lyrics go with this one. Let me know if you have a different take. Always welcome different interpretations on the channel. But here we go. This is Human Error by Subhumans, first heard by me and heard here on EP LP, but it was originally on Reason for Existence EP, recorded in April '82. So yeah, this is originally from April '82, but as I said, I heard it on the EP LP, which is what we're listening to now. So here we go. talk about it. A lot of Subhumans guitar almost has a psychedelic quality for me. Right. It's also about like too many people just didn't want to think about that. Too many people didn't want to worry about that. So just watch a movie, just watch some entertainment and relax. Don't worry about the bombs going off and the wars going on. Maybe more people should care, because if they don't, we'll end up blowing each other up and not be able to stop it. It's such a bloody mess. See my reaction to Rise Against Blood Red, White, and Blue, which deals with that apathy. There's a renewed arms race right now. Specifically of nuclear weapons and intercontinental ballistic missiles. I think that's British. I think that's the Queen. And just don't worry about it. Just go along with what everyone's doing. You'll be fine. And it's the like high kind of psychedelic Subhumans guitar mixed with those hard sort of chords. And also, I love Dick's vocal flourishes, often leading out of a verse. New intensity in the voice. And the children cried before they died, "Is this nuclear war?" And the rest of the world all died. They never cared anyway. Which it goes right into the next song. It's funny, despite that person saying that on Discogs somewhere that the EP LP didn't flow together, they do link several of the tunes. And then, you know, as with any album or, you know, compilation, whatever, when you hear it and you listen to it sort of through multiple times, it gets to the point where the ending of one song immediately prompts the beginning of the next song in your brain. So then if like somehow you hear it like in a different place, it does sound weird. So I get that for someone it might be like, oh, but that's not how it happens in the original album or whatever, or the EP. But for me, I do think it works as an album, and it was always one of my favorite. Nevertheless, I really do like that song. As I mentioned, it has sort of this ska dub vibe for large parts. You know, there's that part where it breaks into like a full sort of punk rock, you know, faster rhythm near the end, but then it does flip back to the ska like dub. But again, it's like a dissonant, like off-kilter ska dub sound, which again, it fits with the subject matter of the tune. And yeah, you know, I don't think it's that much of a stretch to suggest that humanity really does have a problem with the way in which we problem solve and the way in which even on individual levels, but certainly in larger aggregates of humans, we do tend to use violence, force, and territoriality to try to solve problems, which is funny because you hear people sometimes say, like, oh, we used to just punch it out in the backyard. That's how we solve a problem. It's like, well, no, you actually didn't address the problem. You might prove who's, better in combat or who's the more powerful, whatever, but at the end of the day, like, the underlying issues remain. And I think you could extend that to a more national level, which again is this idea that if our citizenry in any country, but certainly as like a global citizenry, if we don't care about the building up of weapons, if we don't care about their wanton use by seemingly psychotic leaders, some of them not, popularly elected or democratically elected in any way, but ultimately, these consequences of, global catastrophe are not beyond the question of reason. So ultimately, whether you're talking the 1980s and the sort of, U.S. Soviet arms race, or you're talking more recent times, arm races happening on multiple continents and, with technology that's way beyond what it was back in the 80s, it is not impossible that, as Carl Sagan would say, we could snuff ourselves out in our very earliest technological adolescence. Nevertheless, I do hope that doesn't happen. There are some people working in many places around the world trying to stop that from happening, whether it's to try to ameliorate political differences or to encourage, nuclear disarmament or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's hard not to be cynical sometimes. Nevertheless, I do think that's what, Dick Lucas would say about a lot of the Subhumans lyrics, is that, yeah, we talk about problems because they need to be addressed. First, step to solving anything is to acknowledge that it exists and to try to address it in one way or another. So ultimately, I really do enjoy that song. I love the way it breaks into that faster rhythm near the end. It really feels like a cathartic release of the pent-up worry and potential ruin that the song speaks of. So in any case, let me know what you think. Let me know if you like that one. Let me know if you, as I am, are a fan of EPLP, or whether for you, one of the albums is one of your favorites. As I mentioned, I like pretty much everything the Subhumans do, so I don't really have like a favorite album, but I will say EPLP and The Day the Country Died were the first two things that I got from them in the mid-90s when I sort of discovered them after discovering punk rock a year or two earlier. So those will always be very special to me. So, there's going to be more reactions from both of those albums, or one of the albums, and the other one is technically a compilation. Nevertheless, I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you did. Thank you for watching and listening. I do appreciate it. Have a good day. Have a good night. I'll see you next time. Peace.